When the wife of this 62-year-old man walked into her garden on this sunny morning, she had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Beneath their grass pasture, she discovered a buried car, and when she and her husband dug it up, all hell broke loose, resulting in her husband leaving the very next day. But before we start, smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Emily, the woman who discovered the car first, walked around her garden completely oblivious that morning. She held a small hand-sized spade for planting newly sprung seeds, and next to her feet was a large watering can. But after watering her first bed of flowers, she spotted something sticking out of the ground. There was a metal-like object sticking out of the soil. It wasn't much, but its material harshly contrasted with the loose and organic earth it was in. "My watering must have moved the ground a bit, uncovering this thing," Emily said to herself. She used her spade to dig around the pointy metal thing, but it didn't take long before a major fright fell upon Emily. The more she dug, the more the hairs on her neck stood up. This object was much larger than she initially thought. Emily yelled for her husband to come over and take a look, and his expression was just as shocked as hers. Nathan, Emily's husband, grabbed a shovel from the shed and joined his wife in the excavation. For over 2 hours, they dug around the foreign object, and by the end of it, Emily's rose garden was completely gone. But it resulted in a clear picture of what was beneath the soil. It was an old rusty car. Nathan stated that the car was a model that had to be made in the 60s as he crouched next to it. The old man inspected every inch of the car and frowned his brows the entire time while doing it. Emily asked if she could join him in the inspection, but Nathan reacted unexpectedly. The jumpy Nathan waved his arms around wildly, making push motions toward his wife, indicating that she had to stay back. "I'm sorry, honey, but I don't think it is safe for you to come any closer to this thing." That remark surprised Emily, and her husband's sudden nervousness added additional weirdness. However, Emily knew her husband was technical, so she figured he probably knew what he was talking about. She obliged and observed the car from a distance. After Nathan finished up his search, he guided her wife back inside. "I have to make a quick call." Emily guessed it must be with an expert. But the sounds that came from the other room indicated otherwise. Emily waited in the living room while her husband used his phone in their kitchen. Emily didn't know who was on the other end of the line, but she heard Nathan speaking frantically, and she could hear his erratic footsteps pacing around. The confused woman placed her ear against the closed kitchen door to get a better idea of what was going on behind it. Who the hell is he talking to? This wasn't just any random expert, because the volume and ferocity in Nathan's voice weren't how you converse with a stranger. When the kitchen door finally flew open again, Emily was ready to confront her husband. She felt like he acted strange ever since he first saw the car. And since then, you've got increasingly more nervous and weird. She wanted to know what was going on. "Who did you call?" But Nathan fell silent. His silent treatment angered his wife, and Emily asked Nathan who he called and what he found in the buried car wreck. But then her husband responded very out of character. He got angry and irritated and said it was none of her business. He also forbade Emily from entering that part of the garden. Emily's head was filled with questions, but every time she asked one, Nathan shut it down instantly. For the sake of not falling into an endless argument, the anxious Emily decided to let it rest for now, and at the end of the day, so did she. The two of them started in bed together. Nathan turned his body so his face pointed toward the wall, indicating that conversation was out of the question. Emily just stared at the ceiling, trying to calm her restless mind. After hours of headaches, she finally found some sleep. But when she woke up the next morning, Nathan's side of the bed was empty. Where has he gone off to now? This entire ordeal was getting too bizarre, and Emily could feel her heart rate rising instantly. "I'm getting too old for this," the worried woman said while putting on her bathrobe. She took her first steps down the stairs and heard sounds coming from the driveway. It wasn't talking she heard, just busy footsteps fumbling with objects. When Emily got to the front door, she saw moving going around in front of their house. It was Nathan, and he seemed anxious. The old man was hastily loading things into their car. Emily opened the door to talk to her husband, but the moment Nathan saw his wife's face sticking out of the open doorway, he bolted. The old man got into his car quickly and started the engine without saying a word. Emily ran toward the vehicle, but she was already too late. With screeching tires and high speed, Nathan hasted away in their car. Emily screamed from the top of her lungs, hoping her husband would still catch her words. "What the hell, man? Where are you going?" But Nathan didn't turn the car around. He just kept driving. In a desperate attempt to reach her husband, she tried to call him, but again, there was no response. This situation was getting too weird for the poor old woman, and Emily felt tears fill her eyes. And that feeling of desperation led her to ignore her husband's wishes, something she hardly ever did. She walked into the garden and visited the wreckage site, a place that Nathan forbade her from going to. Emily circled the rusty old car, hoping to find answers. She wasn't allowed to come this close before Nathan argued that the area wasn't safe. However, with everything that happened over the last 24 hours, Emily questioned if that remark was even true. The old woman couldn't find anything at first. But when she crouched in the hole they dug and looked closer, she noticed something was off. There was a narrow but deep hole underneath the steering wheel. It wasn't in the car, but the ground it lay in, like someone dug a small shaft straight down in the ground, and it wasn't there yesterday. Did Nathan do this? Did Nathan dig up something without her knowing it? And was that why he left? Emily's head almost exploded because of all these questions. After the strange discovery, she walked back into the house defeated. She did not know what to do, but then she saw a letter on the table. She walked closer and saw that it was addressed to her. Once Emily opened it, she recognized her husband's handwriting instantly. He always wrote in a scribbly, narrow pattern, almost like a doctor would. Nathan apologized in the letter for leaving so suddenly, but he stated that he wasn't coming back. Emily broke down in tears while reading the handwritten note. It continued, stating that it was not that he wanted to leave. He loved Emily with all his heart, but apparently he had to leave, and Nathan couldn't tell his wife why. The only thing the letter said was that it was for her safety. The confusion became too much as Emily dropped down in her reading chair. Her hands covered her face, and her elbows were pushed down into the tops of her upper legs so firmly that it hurt. "What must I do? You cannot leave me like this, with all these questions. Nathan, please." Emily couldn't simply accept her husband leaving her and saying goodbye in a letter. There was more behind this, starting with the genuine nerves and fear she witnessed in Nathan's eyes over the last day. This deserved some looking into, and Emily did just that, starting with a phone call. Immediately after putting down the letter, Emily remembered Nathan's phone call from the previous day. It was frantic and panicky, and it was also a huge mistake because Nathan had forgotten one important thing. Her husband was horrible with technology and used the landline to make the call, but that device had caller ID. Emily simply had to check the machine for the last outgoing call, and she would have a number to call back. But it didn't even get to that point, because the number he called was a person she knew. It was Luke, Nathan's dear friend and colleague at the garage he used to work at. Her husband used to be a mechanic, and his specialty was restoring old cars. That's why she quickly believed every word he spoke when he told her to be careful. Luke was his co-worker and partner in crime, and they used to do everything together. So the call to his skilled friend wasn't that suspicious. Emily had the feeling that this man knew more about her husband's disappearance. So naturally, she borrowed her neighbor's car and drove to his address. Once Emily arrived at Luke's address, she was ready to confront him. She rang the doorbell, and Luke opened up. The old man was taken aback when he saw Emily on his doorstep, and her fiery look in his eyes added to that feeling. He invited her to come inside, but didn't need to, because before he could make the gesture, Emily had already walked past him into the hallway. She came straight to business. Emily confronted Luke about the phone call her husband had made to him the day before. She said she knew it was about the car and bluffed her way through the rest of her story to make it more convincing because she was still quiet in the dark. Luke tried to remain silent, but Emily wasn't having any of it. The old woman started picking up stuff and started throwing them around his house, breaking the items on impact. It was quite the showing, and apparently it worked because Luke broke his silence very quickly. He told Emily that her husband indeed called him panicky about the car. Nathan begged me to keep quiet about it. Well, quiet about its origin, that is. Emily didn't understand and asked her husband's friend to elaborate. Luke then said that the sight of the car frightened Emily's husband, and that if Emily knew more about it, she was also an accomplice in the case. Accomplice? What am I an accomplice to? I don't even know what this is about, the confused woman stated. Luke said that Nathan wanted to keep it that way, but his best friend didn't fully agree. Luke said that this was a matter for the police, and when they arrive, I will explain everything. Emily grabbed her phone from her back pocket and called the police while staring at Luke the entire time. This whole situation was feeling fishy, but she was making progress in finding out information, so she wasn't going to question anything. After about 15 minutes, the police officers arrived at Luke's home. And that's when Luke explained the entire situation. Luke started by saying that he was the only one who knew about this story because Nathan didn't trust anyone else with the truth. But I think that even that wasn't fully the case. I think he only told me because of my cabin. Luke then revealed the story of a crime that happened over 40 years ago. It happened before Nathan and Emily met, but at the time, Nathan already owned the house they now live in. It involved a bank heist. The one on Langrove Street, Luke told the officers and Emily, who listened intently. The armed robbery was successful, but when they left, some patrol officers spotted the getaway car, which comprised their identity. They needed to get rid of the vehicle, and that's where Nathan came into play. The men arrived at the garage late in the evening, where Nathan was the only one still working. Nathan always worked late, but he wished he had gone home sooner on this particular evening, because what happened next changed their outlook on his life completely. The robbers entered the garage with their car and threatened Nathan's life. They would only let him live if he did them a favor. Nathan needed to hide or destroy the car they used on the heist. He even got handed the gun they used to threaten the bank employees. If he did not comply, they would find him and end him. Nathan had no choice and eventually decided to bury the car and gun in his backyard. That's where the vehicle remained for over 40 years. That was until Emily found it yesterday during her gardening. Everyone in the room was in shock after hearing the full story. Emily was saddened that her husband had to carry this burden. The police were shocked that it had remained a secret for so long. Luckily for both Luca and Emily, the officers took this case very seriously. They asked Nate where he thought his friend had run off, and Luke had the perfect answer. He returned to the statement about his cabin, an old wooden home deep in the woods about 50 miles from town. Luke's best guess was that his friend was lying low there, hoping never to be found. "Then that is where we will go," one of the uniformed men said. Under Luke's guidance, they drove to the family cabin he owned and quickly opened the creaking front door. And that's where they found him. In the corner of the room sat Nathan. He was shaking in fear, but other than that, he was unharmed. His eyes were large, and he was afraid to come closer. But when he saw Emily's face come through the doorway, all that changed. The old man got up and hugged his wife intensely. "I told you to let it go. Now you're in danger too," Nathan said. But the police promised that they would remain completely safe. Emily's heart broke to see her husband like this. "I can't believe what you went to all those years ago, and to keep this secret for over 40 years is horrible." After some convincing from his wife, Nathan agreed to work with the police to catch these criminals. He realized that if the robbers got caught, he could finally put all of it to rest. He gave the cops all the information he got, including the women he dug up last night from the wreck site. He took the gun to protect his wife. He didn't want anyone to find the weapon in the garden and think she had anything to do with it. But that weapon turned out to be the perfect missing link because it still held the fingerprints of all the criminals. After that, it didn't take long. Police arrested the now old criminals within days. And after a quick hearing, the senior robbers got to spend their last years behind bars. That fact finally gave Nathan the rest he was longing for, and it gave Emily her loving husband back. "It's like a weight has been lifted off his shoulders," Emily said, smiling. Thank you for watching. If you like this story, don't forget to hit the like button, subscription, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our upcoming stories.